Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here across the state of Georgia. Rainy this morning in Macon. Welcome. The phone number here, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Before we get going this hour, sponsored by First Liberty of Georgia. Go to firstlibertyga.com if you're a small or medium-sized business and need access to loan, line of credit, more money to help you become a big business. They're a building and loan. They're not a bank. The Frost family makes their own decisions, and thank you to them for sponsoring the show. Go to firstlibertyga.com. Now, I rarely do this on the program. You know, one day I would love for this to be a national show, but we are here in Georgia right now. I got an obligation to Georgia listeners, and I got to do a weather check for the state, believe it or not. It's that bad out. Now, if you live in Dalton, Jasper, Rome, that area, you're at Carrollton, you are fine. The rain has moved through and your temperatures are dropping. To give you a sense of what's going on out there right now, here in Macon where I am, it is 64 degrees and the temperature is already beginning to drop. In Rome, it's 55 right now. In Dalton, it's 54. In Jasper, it's 57. And that's actually lower than it had been. The temperature beginning to drop there. In Clarksville, you have a little more rain coming in. You think that you're out of it. You've got one more wave of rain coming in. It's actually on top of you right now. It should be beginning to sprinkle if you're in Clarksville on the west side. And it's going to get a little bit heavier, and then you're done, and your temperatures are going to start dropping. You go further south in the state of Georgia right now. Athens, you're in the middle of it right now. The heaviest stuff, though, is moving over towards Augusta. Lake Country right now is getting it. If you are in the Milledgeville area, you've got a ways to go. It is very, very heavy in Milledgeville right now. And in Macon, it's slacking off a little bit in South Macon, but where I am on the north side of town, very heavy rain, and it's about to intensify at the 75-475 split. In Macon, Vidalia, you're about to get hit with it, and then your temperatures are going to start dropping. You go all the way down to Cordele, and you're getting rain in Albany as well. Now, I need to cause you to focus a little bit down in Colquitt, Georgia. We've got a severe thunderstorm warning, and I can see it on the radar. It is a very, very nasty storm right now in Early and Miller County. Those of you listening in Colquitt, and the Blakely area, the Arlington area down there, just take shelter if you can. Also, it's not a severe thunderstorm warning, but it should be near Cuthbert. We got a radio station in Lumpkin that broadcasts us, and we've got a storm headed your way with hail in it. It is very, very, very messy. Now, if you're in South Georgia and you are in Bainbridge or you're in Adel, Quitman, Valdosta, Douglas, you're largely fine. Douglas may get a little bit of rain later today. Statesboro, you're going to get slammed here in just a little bit with rain, and it's a messy, messy day out there. The temperatures are dropping. Just to give you an idea of it, what's happening right now across the state, it's going to get in Macon right now, it's 64 degrees. And it's going to get up to 66 degrees by noon with 100% rain. As the rain goes away, as those of you in Dalton, Jasper, Rome, and Clarksville are finding out, and Carrollton, as the rain goes away, your temperatures are dropping. Northwest Georgia has already had their high for the day. Think about that. Going to be down into the 20s in a good portion of the state tonight, the 30s and the 20s. So that is me doing my bit for Georgia listeners. Basically, if you're not getting, unless you're in South Georgia, if you are in South Georgia to the east of 75, the odds of you getting rain aren't fantastic, but you're still going to start getting cooler weather. Everybody else, you're going to get a lot of rain, and if it has stopped raining, your temperatures are going to be plummeting. So enjoy Christmas. The cold weather finally comes. Now, also, one more random bit for Georgia. If you're going through Henry County, they got a mess up there. A tractor trailer and a rail car have collided, spilling cases of Miller Lite all over the highway. The police say they do not need your help picking up the beer, but there are literally thousands of cases of beer all over the highway in Henry County right now. God bless them. We got to talk about the polling on impeachment. We do, but before we get there, I have a pet peeve we need to discuss. If you're just tuning in, it is Erick Erickson here across the state of Georgia, and Congress is set to send the president two spending bills on Friday. The spending bills, the reason they're sending him two spending bills, this is so stupid. I swear to you, we are run in this country by a bunch of mental midgets on both sides. No offense to midgets. The president 2 years ago said he would never get to a point again where he signed a massive comprehensive spending bill at the last minute. He was never going to do it again. He promised he would never do it again. He told Congress they needed to get their act together and they needed to stop waiting until the last minute to do this stuff. And if they ever sent it to him again, he would veto it and potentially risk a government shutdown. So do you know what the bipartisan geniuses in the United States Congress have done, including our Georgia delegation? The geniuses decided, the president said he would never sign a single spending bill again like this, so let's divide it in half and we'll send him two. He said he wouldn't sign one. Maybe he'll send two. I wish I was making this up, y'all. I really wish I was making this up, but I'm not. The president said he would never sign another omnibus spending bill again, so they've decided to do a bi-omnibus spending bill, a double omnibus spending bill. They've literally cut the piece of legislation in half. Instead of 4,500 pages, there are two pieces of legislation of roughly 2,250 pages in length, and they intend to have it debated and sent to the president. Nobody can read it. Nobody's going to read it. Now, what we're finding is that there's a whole lot of stuff in the legislation that has literally nothing to do with spending. For example, Congress intends to ban the sale of cigarettes to anyone under the age of 21. Okay, it is time for me to get into philosophical objections here. Cigarettes are not a banned substance. It is not illegal to smoke a cigarette. In fact, we have a whole lot of 18, 19, and 20-year-old soldiers and sailors risking their lives in the Middle East and Afghanistan right now who smoke cigarettes. Whether you like it or not, they smoke cigarettes. It calms their nerves. Are they addicted? Absolutely, they're addicted. But Congress doesn't care about that. They're not caring about the addiction. They're not caring about them getting lung cancer. No. The nanny state has just decided that you got to be 21 to do it. So our soldiers and sailors who are dying in Afghanistan, assuming they make it home alive and they smoke cigarettes, they come back to this country having fought for our freedom, and they're going to go to jail if they try to buy a cigarette. This is preposterously stupid. I mean, again, we are being run by a bunch of middle midgets in Washington, D.C. This is a Nancy Pelosi agenda item, by the way. Now, listen, I don't smoke. I don't like cigarettes. I think they stink. My wife has lung cancer. She's not a smoker. She never has been. It's genetic. We try to keep her away from people who smoke cigarettes. It really is gross when you walk into office buildings and you got all these people hanging out at the front who are early aged because they're inhaling their cancer sticks, as George Lucas would call them. Look, but I get it. You smoke. And now Congress is saying, wait a second, we realize that it's been 18 years old forever to buy a cigarette. Now we're going to raise it to 21. All of you 18, 19, and 20-year-old addicts, you're going to have to give up, go cold turkey. This is so stupid. Listen, if you can die for this country and vote for its leadership, I'm actually a big believer you should be able to buy a beer and a pack of cigarettes. This is my libertarian undercurrent here. I'm sorry. I really do believe that if you can join the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Space Force, the Air Force, or go to a polling location and pick the leader of the free world, and you want to go have a beer with a buddy and light a cigarette at the bar, go for it. Go help yourself. The idea that Nancy Pelosi has decided suddenly, no, after all these years, we got to, why don't you just ban it? Why don't you just ban the cigarettes? Well, you're not going to ban the cigarettes because of farmers in South Georgia. You don't want to hurt Sanford Bishop. The Democrats don't want to hurt Sanford Bishop down in the Albany area. They don't want to hurt him. The Republicans don't want to hurt Austin Scott. They don't want to ban cigarettes. They just want to raise the smoking age. So stupid. It's just stupid nanny statism. And on top of that, what are they doing? They're sticking it into a piece of legislation that must pass. So they put it into a piece of legislation knowing it won't pass on its own. And they're going to send this legislation to the president on Friday. The government shuts down on Friday at 5 p.m. if the president doesn't sign it. So they're essentially playing a game of chicken with the president, saying, hey, we want to do all of these nanny state things and spend $1.3 trillion with a T dollars. And by the way, this is only to get us through to the middle of next year. It's not like to get us to the end of next year. It's to get us to the middle of next year. And they're going to tell the president, well, you said you wouldn't sign it if it was one piece of legislation. So we're going to divide it in half. We're going to divide it up, and we're going to give you two pieces of legislation so you can keep your promise. Dude should veto them. I guess I just called the president dude. The president of the United States of America should veto this crap. I mean, he should. Seriously. I mean, we're banning cigarettes. Well, we're not. We're just raising the age. I personally think that Congress should go back to letting states have an 18-year-old drinking age and let them smoke. Or do 19, so you're technically... See, now, actually, a buddy of mine texted me last night. He said, I tend to agree with you, but make it all 19 instead of 18 so we keep it out of high school. I'm like, dude, have you paid attention to high schools, public high schools in America? You got 21-year-olds in high school now, it seems like. They can't graduate. Just make it 18. You vote at 18. Buy your beer, your bourbon, your cigarettes at 18. Might as well. But then $1.3 trillion. Carly Fiorina. There are many things you can say about Carly Fiorina, and I have said many of them. She ran for president. She joined Ted Cruz on a ticket to try to stop Donald Trump. She ran for the Senate unsuccessfully in California. She headed the National Republican Senatorial Committee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She now says that she would support impeaching Donald Trump, but she may vote for him in 2020. She did. She actually, Carly Fiorina, said that. But one of the other things that Carly Fiorina said is that she doesn't really know what the Republican Party stands for anymore. And can we admit she's not wrong? Other than defending the president, what does the Republican Party stand for anymore? It seems like a party devoid of ideas at this point. See, I was an elected Republican. Worst job I ever had, being on city council in Macon, Georgia. God help me. A part-time job, and it was misery. There's this thing called a constituent. And this person will come up to you at the grocery store and tell you that their trash was not collected. And you will say, well, did you roll your trash can down? Well, no, but it's down there now and they haven't come by. Like, you idiot, you got a deadline. Now I'm that guy because I've got two trash cans, and for some reason our stupid city government or county government in Macon screwed up, and they decided, we're only going to pick up one trash can. If you want your second trash can picked up, you got to pay extra. So I decided to pay extra. Rolled them in, and they still didn't pick it up. So I was the guy calling, saying, they picked up my one trash can. They didn't pick up my other trash. I don't even get it anymore. It's a convoluted process, made worse by bureaucrats. But nonetheless, I don't know what they stand for. I have no idea what Republicans stand for anymore. I used to believe Republicans stood for individual liberty and smaller government. And now they're, going to spend $1.3 trillion, and they're going to raise the age of cigarette purchases and whatever else. This is complete nanny statism. It is deeply disappointing. Here is Carly Fiorina talking with Poppy Harlow on CNN.
Despite what many have said in private, here's what she told me on that front. What does the Republican Party today stand for?
I don't know. Loyalty to Trump is what I think it stands for.
And what has
sadly
what has the arc of the last 3 years taught you, and what do you want the party to be in 5 years?
The Republican Party was the party of Abraham Lincoln. I believe three things that I thought the party stood for. Number one, everyone has potential, and we should not be defined by our circumstances. Number two, people closest to the problem know best how to solve it. And number three, power concentrated is power abused. always. It doesn't matter how well intended the holder of power is. Power concentrated is power abused. Those are the things I believe. I don't know that the Republican Party believes in those things anymore. They certainly don't act that way.
She's right, whether you like her or not. And I think it's kind of silly to say I had to vote for impeachment and then support the president in 2020. But she's kind of right. What is the difference between Republicans and Democrats today other than they have different constituency groups? Republicans will cut taxes on everyone. Democrats will cut taxes on the middle class, but raise it on millionaires and billionaires and punish success. Okay, there's a fundamental difference. But they're both bankrupting the country at this point. Both parties are selling out the country to China, essentially, by bankrupting the country. And the Republicans now at this point, they just want access to power. They want power. Whatever happened to devolving power from Washington and making the states more powerful? The laboratories of democracy. $1.3 trillion, and our Georgia delegation is going to help them do this. And the geniuses have decided to split it into two pieces of legislation, hoping the president won't veto it. He sure as heck should veto it.
I really do like his opinion on things.
Erick Erickson, the information you need and the truth you demand.
Yes, you actually should text recipe to 33777. Believe it or not, every week I send out a recipe or two, and I have figured out what recipe I'm going to send out. It is actually one of my favorite recipes. It is one my wife was in a knitting group, and the lady whose house they were at back when Christy was pregnant with our first child, she, Carlene, the lady whose house it was at, made this dish. It was essentially tacos and pasta shells, taco shell pasta. And Christy had it and craved it for the rest of her pregnancy. We had it all the time, and it's actually really, really good, and it sounds disgusting. It's like ground beef and cream cheese stuffed into taco shells with taco seasoning. It's actually really, really good. I have decided that will be my recipe this week, taco shell pasta. It actually is really good. I'll send you a cookie, too, to compensate. Text recipe, RECIPE. Text that word to the number 33777, and I will send you that recipe. You've got to love the New York Post. The New York Post is the tabloid in New York that is famous for its headlines, for its front page headlines. One of its most its most famous headline was "Headless Body and Topless Bar." A mob figure had been decapitated inside a strip club, and that was the headline at the New York Post, "Headless Body and Topless Bar." Well, they've got a new one just in time for Christmas. The cover page of the New York Post today, the headline is Madonna. I'm sorry. Madonna and child. No, it's not Christmas themed. It's a picture of the singer Madonna with her latest boyfriend. She's 61 and he's 25. I thought it was her kid. She's becoming Cher. This is great. Here's the little blurb. Madonna and child. Material girl gets older, but boy toys never change. She may not be like a virgin, but she keeps hunting for them. Madonna stepped out with her new boyfriend, dancer Ala Malik Williams, 25, who is only 2 years older than her daughter Lourdes. Oh, Lord. Madonna and child is the headline. I swear she supports Planned Parenthood because she's going looking for the next fetus to date. Wow. Yes, I just said that. Maybe I shouldn't have. Goodness gracious. By the time Madonna's 90, she's going to be dating embryos. This. Wow. Oh, my goodness gracious. Oh, Madonna. That's just kind of, can you just kind of admit that's gross? I mean, I realize there's Peter Pan syndrome and stuff, but it's really gross. Act your age. Date your age. Yuck. And you know, the dude is just, he's like, she's rich. Does she not realize? Does she not care? I don't know. That's just, no, we need more adults in the room these days, not adults who want to be kids. And we got a lot of them out there. I could go on the tirade for a while. I will choose not to. When we come back, impeachment polling has turned decisively against the Democrats. For the first time since the Democrats began impeachment conversations in October, those who are against it now outnumber those who support it. Why? A surprising detail when we come back. Hello there. Oh, that was unprofessional, wasn't it? It's Erick Erickson here. The Erick Erickson Show. Across the entirety of the state of Georgia, that is right, you must suffer through listening to my voice from North Georgia to South, East Georgia to West, and all points in between. Yes, you must. A face for radio, a voice for print. I'm here. Now, we have to... Well, we need to discuss impeachment because there's a plot twist. We know how this worked. They were going to have impeachment. Everyone was going to be aligned against the president. The media was going to use their power of persuasion to convince everyone the president needed to go. Orange man bad, Cheeto Jesus to be deposed. Those would be the headlines. And yet, it turns out, after all of this spectacle, after all of the hearings, after everything, more Americans are now opposed to impeachment than support impeachment. Yeah. Things didn't quite work out the way the Democrats were expecting. Things didn't work. The media is shocked today. So here's what you're going to hear today. Pay attention to this. You've been hearing it for the last 24 hours now. Fox News poll, Fox News poll, Fox News poll, Fox News poll, Fox News poll. Fox News poll says majority of Americans want the president impeached. Majority of Americans want the president thrown out of office. Turns out we now have polling from USA Today, NPR, CNN, and Quinnipiac. The Fox News poll is the only poll that has a majority of Americans wanting the president impeached. It's the outlier. You know, every poll has this happen. Just so you understand, every poll has this happen. The way polling works, polling can be skewed, and polls can shift based on the pool of people who are in the poll. And typically, the reason I always tell people take the polling average is because individual polling, you may have an outlier and you don't know. So if you take the polling, you're going to have an outlier in one direction, which means you're going to have an outlier in the other direction. One poll will always show a skew towards for. One poll will always show a skew towards against. If you take those two polls together, along with all the polls in between, and get the average, you get a pretty good snapshot of where the public is. Don't believe me? Look at 2016. Hillary Clinton actually won the popular vote in 2016 with 48.2% of the popular vote. What did the polling average have Hillary Clinton getting on Election Day? It had her getting about 47% of the vote. So within a point, that's actually really good. That's really good. When your typical margin of error is 3 points, you've got her within a point of the polling average. The polling average works. Well, for the first time since October, the polling average has the president ahead of the Democrats on impeachment. A majority of Americans don't want the president impeached. They want him left where he is. They want to decide this at the ballot box. And here's the striking thing. You're going to hear a lot more about the Fox poll than the CNN poll because the CNN poll is terrible for the Democrats. Do you know what's happened in the CNN poll? Support for impeachment among Democrats has collapsed, tanked. I mean, it has cratered. It is like my kid coming off a sugar high. 13-point collapse of support for impeachment among Democrats. They were at 90%. 90% of Democrats wanted the president thrown out of office, and now 77. So still a sizable majority, still 3/4 of the Democratic Party want him gone, but a 13-point drop. Why? Why would it collapse? Well, we get some details from the CNN poll. Let me read you what the CNN analysis of their own poll is. Among the 24% of Americans who say a Senate trial on the charges facing Trump would be at least somewhat likely to sway their views, 19% are currently undecided about impeachment and removal, 38% support it, and 43% oppose it. So there are 24% of Americans who say a Senate trial may get them to change their mind, But right now, 43% of those people are opposed to impeachment. Now, here's the kicker. Pay attention to this. Here's your one nugget of the day. About a third of Americans, 32%, believe the impeachment inquiry will ultimately help Trump's reelection bid. A third of Americans believe the impeachment inquiry will help Trump's election bid. That explains the collapse of Democratic polling in favor of impeachment. They are afraid that the longer this goes on, the more it helps the president. And in fact, there is other data out there suggesting that's exactly what's happening. Does anybody know? Can anybody guess what amount of money the president raised this week? Well, not this week, last week. When the articles of impeachment came out last week, how much money did the president of the United States rake in campaign cash in a single solitary 7-day period? $10 million in a week. $10 million in a week. The president of the United States raised $10 million in 7 days because of impeachment. I need to explain to you something about the way campaigns work. I was a campaign lawyer for a long time. Did federal law, did state law, did federal elections, state elections, local elections, state legislative elections, congressional elections. Was a volunteer lawyer for President Bush back in the day. Let me explain to you how campaigns work. You must go through a nominating process. And when you are nominated, you go through a primary election. And when you win the primary election, you become the party's nominee. When Brian Kemp beat Casey Cagle in the runoff for the Republican nomination, Brian Kemp became the Republican nominee, at which point the state party and the federal party could spend copious amounts of dollars helping Brian Kemp. But there's a difference. When you're president, you have caucuses and primaries. And those caucuses and primaries are for delegates. They're not actually for you. Do you know when you become the nominee for your party? You become the nominee for your party at your convention, which I believe the Democratic convention, when is the Democratic? I think it's going to be the end of, when is the 2020 Democrat convention? It is going to be July 13th through July 16th. It used to be in August. It's going to be in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Do you know why they're doing it in the middle of July? Anybody? Anybody? They're doing it in the middle of July because the Democrats' nominee cannot get access to any federal matching dollars or party funds until the convention. If you will recall, George W. Bush, when it was pretty clear John Kerry was going to become the Democratic nominee, the Democrats let me just put this in perspective for you. When was the 2004 Democratic convention? That was the very end of July in 2004. It was pretty obvious after Super Tuesday in 2004, John Kerry was going to be the Democratic nominee. But John Kerry did not become the Democratic nominee until July 29th, 2004. So between mid-March to beginning of April of 2004 and the end of July 2004, George W. Bush's campaign and the Republican National Committee poured hundreds of millions of dollars into attack ads on John Kerry. Remember the windsurfing ad? Kerry going back and forth, flipping back and forth. It was an ad designed to focus on John Kerry flip-flopping back and forth.
I'm George
not
W.
taking
Bush,
positions.
and I approve this message.
In which direction would John Kerry lead? Kerry voted for the Iraq War, opposed it, supported it, and now opposes it again. He bragged about voting for the $87 billion to support our troops before he voted against it. He voted for education reform and now opposes it. He claims he's against increasing Medicare premiums, but voted 5 times to do so. John Kerry, whichever way the wind blows.
That ad defined John Kerry as an untrustworthy person. His campaign was livid about that ad. And that ad was pushed out before John Kerry had the money to respond to it. The Kerry campaign had wiped out their resources seeking the Democratic nomination. They didn't have any money to respond. And the Bush campaign, meanwhile, had raked in cash. He was the nominee, and he could spend it. The Republicans had money to do it. And they destroyed John Kerry. John Kerry, by the way, at this time in 2003 was ahead of George W. Bush in the polling. John Kerry was beating George Bush in the polls. And then the Bush ad team destroyed John Kerry. Fast forward to 2020. The Democratic nominee, whoever it may be, Joe Biden, will not be the Democratic nominee until the middle of July 2020. It will be obvious who the nominee is going to be probably by the middle of March to beginning of April. At which point, the Trump campaign, which just raised $10 million in 1 week, will be able to pour copious resources into defining whoever that Democrat is. Here's the thing. In all the polling, the president's job approval is remarkably steady. It's not good. 43, 44%. It is where Barack Obama's job approval was at this time in 2011. But the president's Quinnipiac polling job approval number is 44%, which is the highest it's ever been. On day one of the Trump administration, his job approval ratings were about 43%. Now, listen, not Rasmussen. Spare me Rasmussen. It's a crap poll. I don't pay attention to it. But in the actual legitimate polling, his job approval was about 43%. And it's been 43% forever. On day one, the public voted for Donald Trump. A majority went for Hillary Clinton, mind you. But in the Electoral College, in the swing states, they went for Donald Trump, and they never really liked him, but they really liked him more than Hillary Clinton. This is a key takeaway from the British election, folks. The public in Great Britain, they don't like Boris Johnson, but they really hated the other guy. And Johnson did a remarkable job of defining the other guy as a ridiculous anti-Semite who is out of touch with the people. And guess what? That's what Donald Trump can do here. The Democrats do have an anti-Semitism problem. But he's raising $10 million a week. Meanwhile, the Democratic candidates are having to spend their money against each other. Joe Biden's campaign is functionally broke, and he's probably going to be the nominee. So he's going to make it through January, February, March, and April and have no money left. And he's not going to be able to get federal matching dollars until the end of July. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, he's got a war chest, and he's not having to spend it. Do you really think Joe Walsh is going to cause Donald Trump to be off his game? Or Bill Weld? No. You've got a new super PAC. Not Stuart Stevens. What's his name? Oh, I got it in my email. Bear with me. What's the little Schmidt? Steve Schmidt, the twerp on MSNBC, the liberal who worked for John McCain. He has decided to start a super PAC. The dude who lost John McCain's race wants to beat Donald Trump. Good luck. The president is blessed with enemies incompetent. It is crazy. Whether you like the president or not, you got to just admire the fact that the man just has incompetent opponents. And he's going to have a massive war chest that they're not going to have, and he will be able to define his opponents in ways they will not be able to define themselves while they're still fighting each other to secure the nomination. And then once it is clear and obvious who the nominee of the Democratic Party will be, they still won't be able to spend their money. Why? Because they won't officially be the nominee till the end of July, at which point then they will get federal matching dollars, and by then it may be too late. Now, before I get into this commercial break, I want to bring you an update on radar readings from Georgia. If you are in northwest Georgia to north central Georgia, the mountains, you're clear now. Clarksville, up at WCHM, you are clear now of the rain. Rome, Jasper, Dalton, Blue Ridge, Young Harris, all of y'all are clear of the rain. If you're in Macon or Milledgeville, you're going to basically be in the rain for the next several hours. Columbus, you're almost out of it. Americus, you've got the heaviest part of the rain right now. You're in the middle of a lightning storm in Americus. Those of you who are in Cordele, in Unadilla and Hawkinsville and Cochran, you've all got rain. If you're in Unadilla, it's clear right now, but then it's going to be a mess. If you're in Athens, you're almost out of it. You'll get a little more coming in. Greensboro, if you're up there on the lakes, you got rain for another couple of hours. Augusta, it's going to be your turn soon. You may think you're in the clear, Augusta, but you're not. It's coming for you. If you're in Vidalia, you may get a little more rain out of it. Statesboro, you're going to get a little more rain. Swainsboro, you're going to get some rain. I'm covering all my stations and wannabe stations out there. We got a lot of rain in middle and south Georgia. If you're in the far south, though, those of you who are listening down in Valdosta and Quitman and Cairo and Bainbridge, well, okay, you got a little rain in Bainbridge, but it's almost you'll be out of it here in a little bit. You're pretty much in the clear. Tifton, you're in the clear, but there is a tornado warning, an active tornado warning right now in Baker and Miller County. If you're in the Camilla area, you're safe. But you go 10 miles to your west, between Damascus and Newton, Georgia, there is a tornado. I can see the swirl on my radar map right now. Your tornado warning expires here in just a little bit. But just be careful out there in South Georgia, please. Be careful. And we will be into cold temperatures here in the next few hours across the state. Those of you in North Georgia, temperatures are already dropping, so I'm jealous.
Honest news and conservative views.
Never separated from the truth.
It's the Erick Erickson Show.
Welcome back. It is Erick Erickson here across the state of Georgia, and since I am across the state of Georgia, north to south, east to west, I feel obligated to bring this up. There is a tornado warning that has just gone into effect just north of Camilla, Newton, Georgia, Baconton, Georgia. It is in the Baker and Mitchell County. It expires in 38 minutes. The National Weather Service says northeastern Mitchell, northeastern Baker County, and southwestern Georgia until 10:30. At 9:51 a.m., a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was located near Newton, moving east at 40 miles an hour. Radar indicates rotation. The dangerous storm will be near Newton around 10 a.m., Baconton around 10:15 a.m. Other locations include Hawkinson, Lester, Flint, Freeman, Red Store, Crossroads, Greeno, and El Modal WMA. I have no idea. Way down there in South Georgia. But you're listening to us down there. You can pick up the show and listen. I would do this for any of you in any part of the state of Georgia, and I want to do it for my South Georgia listening audience right now. There is a tornado warning active in Baker, Mitchell, and in Miller County as well right now, though that one almost expires. So take shelter if you can, if you're in those counties. It is a dangerous situation in South Georgia right now. Also, it's dangerous because those are the areas that were so hard hit by the hurricane and are still recovering a year later, still recovering from the hurricane, having that bad weather come through right now. In the middle part of the state, all the way up to really to South Carolina, a lot of rain to the, it's a diagonal line, essentially south of a diagonal line from LaGrange to Toccoa, you've got rain. Now, my buddy Chip Roy is a congressman from Texas, and he just happened on the floor of the House of Representatives about this ridiculous spending bill.
From Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman from Oklahoma and the gentleman from New York for yielding time, and I respect the amount of work they put into this legislation. I rise without surprise to anyone in this room in opposition to the legislation. I keep hearing that this phrase, "this bill provides." I keep hearing my colleagues saying this, but this bill doesn't provide anything. The American people provide. This bill borrows, and it borrows at a time when we can't afford to borrow more. Our nation is $23 trillion in debt, now racking up more than $100 million of debt per hour. We haven't figured it all out yet, but it appears this bill spends $50 billion more than 2019 spending levels. But don't worry, everybody will go back home and they'll campaign on a balanced budget amendment, which has no prayer of passage. This bill is filled with massive policy changes that we should debate and vote on individually. It has a bailout for big insurance cloaked as tax relief. It embraces the very partial Obamacare repeal that Republicans have argued prop up Obamacare, yet now embrace. The bill changes tobacco age nationwide, turning federalism on its head with nary a whimper from Republicans who like to talk about the 10th Amendment in speeches back home. The bill extends the big giveaway to huge corporations like Boeing in the form of XM for 7 years. The bill funds bureaucrats who wish to target your Second Amendment rights. It funds abortion through Obamacare plans. The biggest problem is we haven't read the bill.
That's Congressman Chip Roy of Texas, a very dear friend to my wife's and me. He's such a good guy. And he's right on this. He's right. This spending bill is an abomination. When we come back, we got to get to some stories here in Georgia, including the voter purge that's happening. And did you hear what happened in Chattooga County to the reporter? The commissioner's wife dumped a soft drink on her head. We got to talk about that story when we come back. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show, across the state of Georgia, from the North Georgia mountains all the way to the Florida line, from the alligators in the Chattahoochee all the way to the jellyfish in the Atlantic Ocean, and all points in between. It is me. Welcome. Glad to have you with me. The phone number, if you want to call in and be a part of the program, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. And this is important. I have settled on the recipe of the week. I will send it out to you tomorrow. But if you want it, you've got to text the word recipe to 33777 to make it happen. I need to talk about the weather. I have done this all morning. Look, one day I want this to be after like Rush and Glenn and Sean and all them retire. I'll wait. I'll be patient. But one day I want to be a national show. Until then, I'm a Georgia show. And because you're all listening in Georgia, unless you're online, I want to tell you about the weather. Northwest Georgia, across the North Georgia mountains, you're good now. Temperatures are dropping. If you're in Athens, though, you've got rain. The Watkinsville area, Bogart is almost out of it. Athens, you're about to have another wave of heavy rain come through, and then it'll start to fade, and temperatures will start dropping. Clarksville, you're good now. Those of you up in Toccoa are almost out of it. But if you're in Milledgeville, you're in Eatonton, you're in Macon, you're in Greensboro, you're in Augusta, Sandersville, Statesboro, Warner Robins, Cochran, all the way down to Albany and Bainbridge, you've got a mess on your hands. Bainbridge, you got a little more rain coming, but there is, and I got to point this out to you, there is a severe thunderstorm warning right now in Baker and Early Georgia, or Baker County and Early County and Miller County. There is a severe a tornado warning, an active tornado warning right now down in South Georgia, Baker and Mitchell counties. If you're in the Camilla area, it's north of you. Pelham, it's north of you. But Baconton and Newton, you have a storm system that is swirling. It's got rotation, very heavy lightning. I can see it in my radar right now, and it's going to be on top of you for a while. Americus, you've got more heavy rain coming towards you right now. The Vidalia area, the Unadilla area, Perry, Warner Robins, Fort Valley, all of you got very heavy rain coming. And again, if you're in the Athens area right now, you're almost out of it. Everybody else, though, in Middle and South Georgia, you got a mess until you get down to Adel, Valdosta, and the like. So there's my bit for King and Country on weather. We got to get into some Georgia stuff, but before we do, if you're just tuning in the first hour, I've been complaining about Republicans now passing a spending bill with $1.3 trillion in spending. We're going to go broke as a country. A very good friend of mine is a member of Congress. His name is Chip Roy. He is from Texas. Now, those of you who are listening in South Georgia, you recognize his name, and you're probably filled with a spittle-fueled rage right now at me for praising Chip Roy, because Chip Roy, for those of you who don't know, those of you in South Georgia, he's infamous. Chip Roy voted to, or objected to, a unanimous consent to pass the funding measure to pay for the hurricane damage. Chip got to Congress and said he was going to object to every spending, to every voice vote on spending that did not involve time to read the legislation. And they tried to rush through a grab bag of spending that in part would pay for the hurricane relief in South Georgia, and he objected to it, and Brian Kemp blew him up. A lot of state representatives and state senators in Georgia blew him up, and he stood by it. He got blasted by his own Republican colleagues for doing it. Well, he's back at it. He's a man of principle, whether you like it or not. He's a good guy. He really is. He's been a friend of mine for years. And he is blowing up his own side. And this is what I like to see. This is what I like about Jody Heiss. He's willing to stand up to his own side and call BS on his own side for selling out conservatives and selling out Republican values. A short time ago, Chip Roy from Texas took to the floor of the House of Representatives and blew up his own side over this spending legislation. And you need to hear the whole thing. I played part of it for you before we went to break. Let me play all of it for you.
From Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentleman from Oklahoma, the gentleman from New York for yielding time, and I respect the amount of work they put into this legislation. I rise without surprise to anyone in this room in opposition to the legislation. I keep hearing that this phrase, "this bill provides," I keep hearing my colleagues saying this, but this bill doesn't provide anything. The American people provide. This bill borrows. And it borrows at a time when we can't afford to borrow more. Our nation is $23 trillion in debt, now racking up more than $100 million of debt per hour. We haven't figured it all out yet, but it appears this bill spends $50 billion more than 2019 spending levels. But don't worry, everybody will go back home and they'll campaign on a balanced budget amendment, which has no prayer of passage. This bill is filled with massive policy changes that we should debate and vote on individually. It has a bailout for big insurance cloaked as tax relief. It embraces the very partial Obamacare repeal that Republicans have argued prop up Obamacare, yet now embrace. The bill changes tobacco age nationwide, turning federalism on its head with nary a whimper from Republicans who like to talk about the 10th Amendment in speeches back home. The bill extends the big giveaway to huge corporations like Boeing in the form of XM for 7 years. The bill funds bureaucrats who wish to target your Second Amendment rights. It funds abortion through Obamacare plans. The biggest problem is we haven't read the bill. Days like today, everyone declares bipartisanship. But in this version of bipartisanship, it is the bipartisan smell of Christmas jet fumes and everyone's desire to get home. Fueling the worst kind of bipartisanship, the kind that says to heck with it. Keep spending money we don't have and leave it to our kids and grandkids to clean up. No one has read the bill. It's a massive, unreadable 2,313-page bill filled with government-expanded goodies and spending, and it was dropped on us yesterday afternoon at 4:30 p.m. My staff got their first look at 4:30. The bill is a blatant violation of the House's 72-hour rule, a pretty weak rule requiring we have at least 72 hours to review legislation. Everyone back home is saying, are you kidding me? In this case, 2,300 pages. So,
I'll yield you. I'll yield the gentleman additional 30 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gentleman's recognized for additional 30 seconds.
75 years ago this week, American forces were under siege from 200,000 German soldiers, over 1,000 panzers, as Hitler mounted a counteroffensive in the middle of the freezing cold winter at Christmas. Our boys no doubt wanted to get home. Yet this Congress surrenders. It surrenders to the swamp, mortgaging the future, the very future those men fought for. The president last spring, about a massive omnibus, said, I will never sign another bill like this again. I'm not going to do it again. Nobody read it. It's only hours old. Some people don't even know what's in it. It's $1.3 trillion, the second largest ever. Mr. President, I look forward to your veto.
Amen and amen. Yes, please. We got to do this. We got to do this. He's got to veto this. He absolutely has to veto this. I'm aggravated. It is a bad piece of legislation, and we should not be doing it. But he's going to. I suspect he's going to. And we should all be disappointed about that. We should be disappointed about the Republicans who sell us a bag of goods on limited government and then do stuff like that. It's unfortunate. I could spend all day on this. I won't. I'm not going to, but we should. Now, I will move on to other things, including in Chattooga County. Now, for those of you who don't know where Chattooga County is, it is just north of Floyd County. Floyd County is Rome. And Chattooga County is just north of there. Tryon, Somerville is up there. You got James Floyd State Park is up there. It's a beautiful area north of Rome. In fact, you take US 27 and it winds up going it goes straight through Chattooga County. Well, the Chattooga County Commission budget hearing Friday morning started rather quietly. I did not know this. I had no idea. There is one county commissioner in Chattooga County. Talk about limited government. So the Chattooga County Commission budget hearing was Friday morning. It started quietly. Now, Jason Winters is the sole commissioner in Chattooga County. He said at the head of the table, I'm reading from the Chattanooga Times Free Press. This story, by the way, has gone viral. It's in the New York Times today. The sole commissioner sat there, and he checked his watch, sat at the table. There's a video by Casey Bryant. She's a reporter at a news site all on Georgia. Winters took a sip from a paper cup. held a smile for 30 seconds. He held up a copy of the Somerville News. He asked if anyone in the room needed it. Then Winters' eyes widened as he watched his wife, Abby Winters, off camera, pour an entire soft drink on the head of the reporter, Casey Bryant. I'm sorry. The Chattanooga Free Times calls it a soda. It's actually Coca-Cola. She poured a Coke or a soft drink. I refuse to say pop and soda. It sounds like a Yankee word. She poured an entire soft drink on the head of Casey Bryant, the reporter. There you go, she said. I'm sick of it. Someone else said, oh, that's classy. Every bit of this has been brought on by her, Commissioner Winters said, pointing in the direction of Casey Bryant. Nobody, as police were called, an arrest warrant was put out on Abby Winters on charges of battery and disorderly conduct. Sergeant Ty Hutchins with the Somerville Police Department detailed in an incident report that Bryant did nothing to provoke Abby Winters. However, witnesses said Mrs. Winters told Bryant and others that she deserved that. After the meeting with her attorney late Friday, Abby Winters told police she accidentally poured the drink on her head, stumbled and tripped. Police said several witnesses mentioned a Facebook post by Casey Bryant on her personal account. Bryant posted a meme on her Facebook page with the text, "The moment when you hit a nerve," with a cat stirring the pot the night before the meeting. The same week, Bryant had posted a screenshot of a text message she received as a tip from a source, asking her to look into a trip that Commissioner Winters and his wife took to Paris. A pause to cough. Bryant apparently was asked to look into a trip that the commissioner and his wife took to Paris, quote, after all he has not done for our county, end quote. The tip came from someone who worked with the commissioner's wife. Bryant's video captures some of that. When someone sitting next to Bryant said that she brought it on herself, Bryant asked, by saying that he went to France? Oh, yes, B word, Abby Winters replies, according to Jason Espy, a reporter with the Somerville News who was in the room. Delvin Dutton, owner of All on Georgia, said in a statement Friday he was disappointed to see not only the behavior of those involved, but the excuses made for the behavior. Abby Winters turned herself into the jail at 4:30 Friday, was released on a $1,520 bond. Commissioner Winters told the Times Free Press Monday morning he was unable to comment on the incident and would make a prepared statement. Is he going to resign? The commissioner, Commissioner Winters, is on video, or at least recorded, and the audio is recorded of him saying every bit of this has been brought on by her. His wife is recorded. Again, let me read you the key excerpt here. Winters took a sip from a paper cup and held a smile for 30 seconds. Commissioner Winters held up a copy of the Somerville News and asked if anyone in the room needed it. And then his eyes widened as he watched his wife, Abby, off camera, pour an entire soft drink on the reporter's head. There you go, Commissioner Winters' wife was heard say, and I'm sick of it. Oh, that's classy, someone else said. And then the commissioner said, every bit of this has been brought on by her. And someone else said nobody brings that on herself. Bryant put the camera in her bag. This is the reporter, gathered her belongings and left. Wow. Class act, Commissioner. Class act. Now, what you need to know, what you got to pay attention to here, is that the commissioner says, this is all caught on tape, people. This is caught on tape. Commissioner Winters says every bit of this has been brought on by her. And then after, I love this part. Y'all, this is why I couldn't be a lawyer anymore. I had to stop being a lawyer. There's this thing called a client, and they tend to be terrible. After meeting with their lawyer, suddenly it becomes oops, I tripped. It's called caught on tape. There are witnesses in the room, and the commissioner is caught on tape saying every bit of this has been brought on by her. We have the commissioner's wife referring to the reporter as the B word, according to Jason Espy, an eyewitness who also happens to be a reporter for another news service. Oh my gosh. Only in small town Georgia does stuff like this happen. It's like Florida man has polluted everything and come up from Florida and polluted Georgia like the armadillos. They made it up to Somerville. Up in Chattooga County, we got a commissioner's wife pouring water. And oh my goodness gracious, she's got a mugshot. She's smiling, the wife, Abby Winters. This is from the Chattooga County Sheriff's Department. I'm assuming it's a mugshot. Yep. Abby Winters, she's smiling. Oh my goodness gracious. Small towns. You got to love this in Georgia. Hey, we had exciting stuff back in my day on the Macon City Council, but nobody ever poured anything on anybody else's head. And by the way, again, it's a Coke. It's not a soda.
I really do like his opinion on things.
Erick Erickson, the information you need and the truth. Nine 973-7425.
All right. Might as well tell the story. While we're telling stories on small town government in Georgia. All right. Back when Let's see. I got elected to city council down in Macon in 2007. So Barack Obama gets elected in 2008, and in 2009, some members of the Georgia legislature tried to make Barack Obama an honorary member of the General Assembly, and the Republicans declined. So the wife of one of the people who had pursued that in the General Assembly was on the city council in Macon and attempted that resolution in Macon. And all the women from the local Democratic Party showed up in the city. Well, you know, I had run several of the races for members of the city council who were Democrat. I was one of 2 Republicans on the 15-member city council, Macon the only city council in Georgia that had a partisan city council. And so they tried this resolution. Well, because I had helped so many people run, I got a committee chairmanship, which put me on the rules committee for the city council. So everything had to come through the rules committee to get through the floor. It got to the rules committee. I started making amendments to the resolution to make Barack Obama an honorary member of the city council. Let's see. I remember some of my amendments. They had to be in writing. I came prepared. I had a stack of, it was like 200 amendments. We were going to be there debating all night. If they were going to do this, I was gonna make them suffer. Such a jerk. So there was an amendment that we added a whereas clause. Whereas we don't hold it against him that he had tried cocaine. Whereas we don't hold it against him that he had been part of the Choom gang and smoked lots of marijuana. Whereas we don't hold it against him that his childhood mentor was a noted communist who hated America. On and on. I had them all. And then afterwards, all of those, of course, get struck down and voted down. And then we get to the whereas we, or therefore we be it resolved, we also make Sean Hannity a member of the city council. We make Rush Limbaugh an honorary member. We make George W. Bush an honorary member. We make Dick Cheney they went on and on and on. And the member of council supported, she's just glaring at me the whole time. Just I'm a racist and on and on and on. She's just, I can't believe you'd show your face here and do this. Well, it finally got to the amendment to resolved that we also make our spouses honorary members of city council, at which point one of the people in charge says, oh, hell no, I ain't voting against my wife, and pulled the resolution to make Barack Obama an honorary member. It died, and all these members of the Democratic Women's Coalition, or whatever they called themselves, they were giving me just death stares. If they could have shot laser beams out of their eyes and killed me that night, they would have.
30.
It was so much fun. It really was. The machinations on city council were way, way, way fun. But it was miserable for a part-time job. I'm glad I got a job in radio. I had to give it up to go take a job in radio. All right. When we come back, we got more Georgia news, including the voter purge is moving forward in Georgia. I'll give you the details. Hello there, it is Erick Erickson here across the state of Georgia. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Do you want to know a dirty little secret? So, we started this radio project in the middle of August. Just decided, why don't I do a radio show? I'll just give it to any station in Georgia that wants it. I'll give it to them. Won't charge a thing. I'll even give them all the ad slots. I'll figure out a way to put ads in during my talk time. So if you want a statewide ad, let me know. Help us monetize it. But so I've got someone to run the board, and I got someone to do the call screening, audio editing. Well, I'm giving you the phone number, but the call screener left for Montana for Christmas vacation. So you can't actually call, just so you know. Little details. The backup call screener. Next year we'll do better planning and have backup call screener. But we got plenty of news to talk about anyway. I don't need your calls, but I'll still give you the phone number just so you remember it. So when he comes back, you'll be able to call the program. The voter purge has been, I'm actually kind of surprised. It is an Obama appointee, federal judge in the Northern District of Georgia, has allowed the voter purge to happen. Dun, dun, dun. So for those of you who have no idea, Georgia in every odd numbered year purges the voter rolls. They get rid of all the voters on the rolls who for 7.5 years have not voted. So, in other words, if you're purged, there were 300,000 people who were purged, 321,115 people who were purged from Georgia's voter rolls. Those are people, all of them, every single one of them, are people who have not voted since May of 2012. In other words, these are people who did not vote in the Obama-Romney race. These are people who did not vote in the Nathan Deal, Carter race, Jason Carter. These are people who did not vote in the David Perdue, Michelle Nunn race. These are people who did not vote in the Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton race. And these are people who did not vote in the Brian Kemp, Stacey Abrams race. They have not voted since May of 2012. And the state of Georgia has a use it or lose it law. The reason the state of Georgia has a use it or lose it law is because the state of Georgia has the most liberal voter registration law in the country. When you get your driver's license in the state of Georgia, you are registered to vote. But wait, you say, you can't vote till you're 18 and you get your driver's license at 16. God help me, I got 2 more years. Oh, please, sweet Lord Jesus, come quickly. My teenager's going to have her driver's license in 2 years. Nonetheless, she will go get her driver's license, and she won't be registered to vote. She'll be put in the interim voting file. And when she turns 18, guess what? She'll be registered to vote. Actually, I take that back. I think she's going to go back when she's 18 and get an updated driver's license because she'll no longer be considered a minor, and she'll be automatically registered to vote. When you're 18 and older and you get a driver's license in Georgia, you're automatically registered to vote. And so the federal government requires, and this gets missing in all the press coverage of the story, this is always missing, the federal government, a Democrat-backed law in the early 2000s called HAVA, the Help America Vote Act, requires that states routinely clean up their voting rolls. Well, the Democrats, pay attention here, the Democrats in Georgia decided that with the most liberal voter registration law in the country, they would take an aggressive stance on cleaning up the voter rolls. So every 7 years, the people who have it, or every other year, every odd numbered year, they don't do it in even numbered years because there are state elections. But in every odd numbered year, they find the people who have not voted for 7 years and they purge them from the voter rolls. If you haven't voted in 7.5 years, actually is what it works out to be. Now, let me explain the process to you. What happens is if you miss 2 election cycles, and by 2 election cycles, I mean 2 even-numbered cycles. So you've missed a presidential race and you've missed a gubernatorial race in Georgia. 4 years. In the 5th year, is that right? No. Yeah. Okay. It is 2 presidential cycles, essentially. I'm sorry, I'm doing the math in my head, and doing math in my head hurts. Okay, yes. So it's 4 years. So if you haven't voted in 4 years, so you missed 2 presidential cycles and a gubernatorial cycle at least, or 2 gubernatorial cycles and a presidential cycle. You haven't voted in 4 years. In the fifth year, you get a postcard in the mail. And the postcard in the mail says, hey, you haven't voted in the last 4 years. That to us suggests that you are dead, in jail, incapacitated, or no longer live there, and therefore we're going to take you off the voter rolls. If you are still an active voter and you would like to cast a vote in the future, please call your local board of elections. Here is the phone number, or just vote in the next election year. That's all. So they send out those postcards in the fifth year. Someone hasn't voted in 4 years. In the fifth year, they send out a postcard and say either call your board of elections or just show up and vote in the next election. And they don't even mean municipal elections. So then you're on year 5 now. The postcard's gone out. Year 6 rolls by, and then year 7 rolls by. They get to the end of year 7 after the statewide election. And after the statewide election, then they say, all right, who are all the people who haven't voted in the last 7.5 years that we haven't heard from, and they haven't showed up to vote, and they haven't called their local board of elections? And they take all those names and they take them off the voter registration list. And you got to go register to vote again. Now, here's what typically happens, and here's what happened in Georgia. They send out the postcards in the 5th year. We're talking, they sent out postcards 2 years ago. And of those postcards, half of them came back, 321,115, slightly more than half came back. And we know for certain that the people either moved out of state or they moved to a new county. And so what the state is going to do for sure with those people is they're going to take them off the voter rolls for their old county. Let's say you were in Pickens County and you moved to Clark County. The state is going to purge you from the Pickens County voter registration file. They're going to leave you on the Clark County voter registration file. They're just going to purge you from your old county. You don't live there anymore. Or they got a note back. The postcard was returned and said the recipient now lives in Kentucky. Well, they're going to take you off because the post office sent a note back saying this guy lives in Kentucky. They're going to take you off voter rolls. Well, here's a problem. That leaves 120,000 people. And those people's postcards either did not come back or they came back as undeliverable from the post office saying, we don't know where this person lives. If the postcard didn't come back, the odds are the person still lives at that address and they couldn't be bothered to either 1, show up and vote, or 2, call their board of elections. And so in odd numbered years, in December following the election, the Secretary of State purges all those people from the voter registration file. This year, Brad Raffensperger, Georgia Secretary of State, did something different, something that's never been done before. Brad Raffensperger made public the list. And he says, here are all the people we're going to purge, all 320,115 people. Here are all the people we know have moved out of state, and so we're canceling their voter registration file. And here are all the people we know have moved to a different county, so we're canceling their old county registration file and leaving their new county registration file. And then here are the 120,000 people. We have no idea where these people are. We don't know if they're dead. We don't know if they're in jail. We don't know if they're incapacitated. We don't know if they're living in their same house or if they've moved, or we can't find them. So will you go out and try to help us find them? They made the list public, 120,000 people. They made the list public. And they gave the media and left-wing interest groups ample time, a month plus, to go out and find these people. And they couldn't find them either. So they're going to purge them from the rolls and say, we don't know where these people live. They haven't voted since May of 2012. We can't find them anywhere. We're taking them off the voter registration list. The federal government requires us to clean up our list and get rid of people who don't vote. So that's what we're doing. We're complying with the law. So what did the Democrats do? Instead of going out and trying to find these 120,000 people, they ran into a federal court in Georgia. They judge shopped for an Obama-appointed judge and said, wait, you can't throw these people up. This is unconstitutional. This is illegal. This is a violation of the Voting Rights Act. This is a violation of civil rights. Well, guess what? They did this before as well. Remember in 2015 or in 2017, there was a massive purge of voters. It was like 500,000 voters were purged. The reason was because the Democrats filed a lawsuit in 2013, and a federal judge stopped the state from being able to clean up the list. And the case went on until the end of 2015, and the Democrats lost. Well, in Georgia, you're prohibited from cleaning up voter rolls in even-numbered years. So they had to wait until 2017, which is why there was such a massive number of voters purged at the time. They couldn't do 2013's list, and they couldn't do 2015's list. They had to do 2013, 15, and 17 all together. So it was like 500,000 people. And it was a headline designed to try to embarrass Brian Kemp. And the national media reported it ignorant of all the facts, willfully ignorant of all the facts, that this is in compliance with federal law. Well, guess what? The Democrats ran back into court. They lost the court case in 2015, and they've run back in 2019 trying to file the exact same lawsuit for the exact same things. And this time the Obama-appointed judge said, nope. You've already lost this case before. We're not going to let you refile the case. And by the way, the Secretary of State's office was able to show that proportionally, they're purging people regardless of race, that they can't prove a racial intent. And that was the Democrats' claim, is that this was done to target black voters. But there are actually more white people on the list being purged than black people. And in terms of proportional percentage of population, it was pretty much matching the population of registered voters in Georgia. So there was clearly no racial intent when the percentage of people purged matched the percentages, racially demographic percentages in the state. But again, the Democrats did this in 2013, and they lost the case in 2015. And they filed the exact same lawsuit, and it was a federal judge appointed by Barack Obama said, you can't do it again, sorry. You already lost this case on these claims. So good for him. Now, what he's decided to do is he didn't enjoin the state. He would have enjoined the state if he thought there was a reasonable chance that the state was going to lose the case. But the judge is signaling he thinks the state's probably going to win this case just like they won the last case. The evidence is on the state side. It is in compliance with federal law, doing a procedure enshrined in state law that was passed by Democrats. And the Democrats can complain all they want. But again, the law is on the side of the state here. They're just complying with federal and state law. They're doing what Democratic administrations did. The Democrats never complained when Zell Miller did it, but he did it. They never complained when Roy Barnes did it, but they did it. Now they're complaining, or I guess Kathy Cox was Secretary of State then. They never complained then, and now suddenly they're complaining when Brad Raffensperger's doing it, when Brian Kemp did it. Suddenly it's a sinister experiment when really it's just complying with the law the Democrats themselves passed in Georgia. And the federal government, it was a bipartisan, the Help America Vote Act was bipartisan legislation after the Bush-Gore election, where Bush won but lost the popular vote. And yet somehow the Democrats want to concoct. Here's what's going on. The Democrats nationally are fundraising off grievance. They're trying to keep alive the idea of racial hostility by the president and the Republicans. They're trying to keep alive a grievance-fueled system for voters. And the reason they're doing it, you need to understand. The Democratic Party is increasingly a party of atheist, rich white people. If you're listening to me now and you are a well-to-do white Democrat, the odds are you don't go to church except maybe Christmas and Easter. And the odds are you don't believe all that Bible stuff. The odds are you're not going to like my Christmas special next week. Black voters and Hispanic voters in the Democratic Party are socially conservative. They're benefiting from the Trump economy. And they look less and less like the power within the Democratic Party. So the way the Democrats have decided to try to keep black and Hispanic voters in the Democratic Party is to tell them Donald Trump's a racist, the Republicans are racist, and they're trying to deny you your right to vote. Voter suppression. The number of Democrats who believe voter suppression as an article of faith when there's really no evidence of it is astonishing. Frankly, in the same way, a lot of Republicans believe that voter fraud shapes elections, and there really isn't a lot of evidence of voter fraud either. There's as much evidence of voter fraud as there is of voter suppression, and it's not very much. You got a handful of cases every year of stupid people doing stupid things. But there really isn't a significant amount of evidence either way that it's actually happening. It's certainly not coordinated by parties. But the Democrats, as an article of faith, believe Republicans systematically are trying to hurt black people and stop them and Hispanic people from voting. And there's no real evidence of it. So they manufacture these stories. They take this voter registration purge. Look, they're throwing all the black people off the rolls. Actually, they're throwing more white people off the rolls. Look, voter suppression. Actually, you had a record number of black people vote in Georgia in 2018. Look, more voter suppression. No, actually, you actually had a massive registration of black voters in Georgia in 2018. But that's all they've got. The fear. They're trying to scare people. And a federal judge who is black, who was appointed by Barack Obama, said, actually, no, there's no racism here. They're just following the law.
Honest news and conservative views.
Never separated from the truth.
It's the
You really should text recipe to 33777 to get my recipe tomorrow for taco pasta. Yeah, it's tacos and pasta. It's awesome. I'm sending it out tomorrow. Text recipe, RECIPE. Just type that word in, and then the number you text it to is 33777. And I'll send a cookie recipe too this week just to make you happy. I like sending recipes to you guys so you can break bread with others, make it easy for you to come up with new recipes without having to troll the internet finding stuff. I want to spend just a moment on some housekeeping, and then we got plenty of other news we've got to get to, including this USA Today poll that has the president now beating Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg. We'll get there. But so you hear now on this program on a daily basis a 1 minute piece by Chris Burns at Dynamic Money. Chris is a friend. He's actually my wife's and my financial advisor, planner, a great guy. Dynamic Money is a fantastic company. They sponsor this program in addition to running ads on the program. And Chris is going to fill in for me on Monday while I step out to get ready for Christmas. I will be back on Christmas Eve for my Christmas show. You probably need to prepare yourselves. You got a week from today, the Christmas program, which is, well, if you can't make it to church next Tuesday, just listen from 9 to noon, and it'll scratch that itch, I guess. But get thee to Christmas Eve services. But yeah, so Chris will be filling in for me. I'll be back Tuesday and Wednesday for Christmas. I don't want other people to work on Christmas Eve and Christmas for me. I will handle it, and then he will fill in the rest of the week as well. He's got to be a great friend, and really appreciate him being able to fill in for me as well. He's a good guy, and so thanks to him, and thanks to Dynamic Money for their sponsorship of the program and for running the ads on the program, helping us get this program done, because otherwise it's out of my pocket. If you want to advertise across the state of Georgia, take one shot, well, let me know. We're happy to help. You can shoot me an email, Erick, ERICK, @theresurgent.com. But this hour of the program is actually sponsored by First Liberty of Georgia, another great company that has stood up and supported this program and helped us get off the ground. The Frost family are tremendous people, actively involved in Republican politics in Georgia, good Christian conservative family, and they like to help small and medium-sized businesses grow. And if you're listening anywhere in the United States of America and you have a small or medium-sized business and you need access to capital to become a large business, the Frost family actually can help you. They are not a bank. They're a building and loan. It's First Liberty Building and Loan is the actual name. And they can get you access to capital without the big bank bureaucracy. They make their lending decisions themselves. And so they can help you grow. And it supports our show. If you go to firstlibertyga.com, that's their website, firstlibertyga.com, and you reach out to the Frost, if you're a small or medium-sized business, you help this program. You support this program by sending your business to the businesses that support the show. So if you need a financial planner, financial advice, Chris Burns is your guy. If you need a loan for your business, you need access to capital for your business, the Frost family, they're your people. Go to firstlibertyga.com. I literally could not have gotten this show off the ground in the state of Georgia without the Frost family's help and First Liberty of Georgia. I could not have done it. And so I thank them tremendously. And I thank them for their support of the show. I thank them for their friendship. And I really encourage you, if you need access to capital, go to firstlibertyga.com. Reach out to the Frosts, and they should be able to help you. Now, when we come back, there's a poll out from USA Today. And it is a poll that shows for the first time the president surging into the lead against the Democrats.
15.
And I want to discuss this with you, but we also need to talk about the rise of anti-Semitism, because this is a big thing now, and it's not getting enough attention. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here across the state of Georgia. The phone number, if you would like to be a part of the program, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. But don't actually call because my call screener's on vacation. I forgot to hire a backup call screener. Hey, listen, we're working the kinks out of this program. We'll have them all worked out by the new year. You can get me on Twitter, though. You can actually interact with me on Twitter. You got to be following me for me to see your tweets, though, at EW Erickson. The best place to follow me, though, is Instagram at EW Erickson, because I don't do politics on Instagram. Instagram is all about my love of cooking. I love to cook. It is a great distraction from politics, and it is where we can find common ground with people with whom we disagree on politics. You did not come for the cooking show today, though. There is a poll out. It is the USA Today Suffolk poll. President Trump, for the first time, is leading his rivals in the polling. Think about that. All the polls have pretty consistently showed that Donald Trump is going to lose to all the Democrats. But the reality is in the polling that Donald Trump is actually winning right now. Let me give you, this is the USA Today Suffolk poll, which actually is a pretty credible poll if we're honest about it. They've got Trump by 3 points against Biden, Trump by 5 points against Sanders, Trump by 8 points against Warren, Trump by 10 points against Buttigieg, Trump by 9 points against Bloomberg. You probably have not heard about the IBD TIPP poll, which is also another pretty accurate poll. It has Biden ahead of Donald Trump by 5 points. But Trump ahead of Sanders by 1, ahead of Warren by 4, ahead of Buttigieg by 2, ahead of Bloomberg by 1. In fact, frankly, it looks more and more like the Fox News poll is the anomaly. It has Biden up 7, Sanders up 6, Warren up 1, Buttigieg up 1, and Bloomberg up 5. Compare that with the Marquette poll in Wisconsin. It has Biden up 1, and then Trump up 2 over Sanders, 1 over Warren, 1 over Buttigieg, 1 over Booker, 1 over... and then CNN has Trump up, Biden, Sanders, Warren, Buttigieg in Texas as well. Y'all notice the media isn't paying attention to a ton of these polls that have Trump ahead. Now, I do my best, and again, just like in the first hour and the second hour, I will tell you now here in the third hour of this program that you should pay attention to the polling average. The polling average actually is meaningful. The individual polls are not. The reason for individual polling not being very reliable is because you've got outliers, and you don't know what the outlier is. And the outliers go in both directions. So you will have one poll that has Donald Trump up 10 points, and one poll that has Donald Trump down 10 points. And in between, you've got polls that have Trump up 1, Trump down 1, Trump up 2, Trump down 2, Trump up 5, Trump down 3. And if you take the average of all of these polls, you get a pretty good snapshot of where the president actually is and where his opponents actually are, because the outliers actually are useful in balancing the polls in an average. And if you take the poll average, I mean, for example, let me go back to because I think I gave you a wrong number in the last hour, but let's go back to 2016. In the polling average, Hillary Clinton got 46.8% of the vote in the polling average. She actually wound up getting 48.2% of the vote nationally. So she was within 2.1 percentage points of a polling average. When the polls typically have a margin of error of over 3%, she was within the margin of error. With Donald Trump, he got 43.6% in the polling average. He wound up getting 46.1%. Again, pretty good for the polling average. That's why you take the polling average. And just consider the wild swings. The Economist YouGov poll had Clinton at 49, and she got 48.2% of the vote. But the IBD tip poll had her at 43. She got 48% of the vote. So when you take the polling averages together, everything balances out fairly well. That's why you should pay attention to the polling average. So, but let's look at a couple of these polls together. It's too early to have polling averages. But what do we have in a series of polls? They're all by good pollsters. I'll tell you when I don't like pollsters, and I will tell you, I'm a little bit skeptical of Suffolk polling, but they're not terrible. I'm trying to find in 2016, the USA Today Suffolk poll, it wasn't out of line with everybody else, so that's not bad. Yeah, it wasn't out of line. It had their last poll had Hillary Clinton at 49. She wound up getting 48.2, so that gives you some good perspective there. And so it's notable that you have a couple of really good pollsters right now who are saying that the president has moved ahead of the Democrats. That's actually interesting when you have USA Today and IBD. And you've got Marquette in Wisconsin. Let's not forget that. All of them pointing to a trend in the president's favor, even though the president's job approval rating is not good. The trend lines are there. Now, I'm not going to rail on the polling. I will tell you the polls that I don't like. And they're related to the impeachment polling. For the first time since it began, the president's impeachment polling, more Americans oppose impeachment than support it. I don't like issue advocacy polling. And the reason I don't like issue advocacy polling is because it is very easy for pollsters to insert their own polling biases in order to shape a poll. So, for example, Planned Parenthood routinely comes out with polling that shows a majority of Americans support abortion rights. The most consistent pollster in the country is Gallup. Gallup has polling on the pro-life issue going back to Roe v. Wade in 1973. And a majority of Americans have always been consistently pro-life. And the Gallup polling it pretty consistently is, do you support or oppose abortion? With Planned Parenthood, of course, they make it about women's health. Don't you believe that since abortion is a critical component of women's health, don't you believe abortion rights are a good thing? The polling is skewed. Let me play this audio. I love this audio. I keep this audio on file. This is from, if you've ever seen the British comedy on PBS, Yes, Prime Minister. This is years ago. It was such a great show. When I was a kid, I grew up in Dubai, and Yes Minister and then Yes Prime Minister came on. I loved the show as a kid. I was developing a love for politics as a kid in Dubai. Yes, Prime Minister was on. It was a great comedy. And this kind of explains to you why issue advocacy polling is a bad thing. And you should never pay attention to issue advocacy polling, even when it goes in your direction.
He's going to say something new and radical in the broadcast.
What, that silly grand design? Bernard, that was precisely what you had to avoid. How did this come about? I shall need a very good explanation.
Well, he's very keen on it.
What's that got to do with it? Things don't happen just because prime ministers are very keen on them. Neville Chamberlain was very keen on peace.
Yes, he thinks it's a vote winner.
Ah, that's more serious. Sit down. What makes him think that?
Well, the party have had an opinion poll done. It seems all the voters are in favour of bringing back national service.
We'll have another opinion poll done showing the voters are against bringing back national service.
We can't be for it and against.
Of course they can, Bernard. Have you ever been surveyed?
Yes. Well, not me, actually. My house. Oh, I see what you mean.
Well, Bernard, you know what happens. Nice young lady comes up to you. Obviously, you want to create a good impression. You don't want to look a fool, do you?
No.
No, so she starts asking you some questions. Mr. Woolley, are you worried about the number of young people without jobs?
Yes.
Are you worried about the rise in crime among teenagers?
Yes.
Do you think there's a lack of discipline in our comprehensive schools?
Yes.
Do you think young people welcome some authority and leadership in their lives?
Yes.
Do you think they respond to a challenge?
Yes.
Would you be in favor of reintroducing national service?
Yes. Oh, well, I suppose I might.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Of course you would, Bernard. After all you've told you can't say no to that. So, they don't mention the first 5 questions, they publish the last one.
Is that really what they do?
Well, not the reputable ones, no, but there aren't many of those. So, alternatively, the young lady can get the opposite result.
How?
Mr. Woolley, are you worried about the danger of war?
Yes.
Are you worried about the growth of armaments?
Yes.
Do you think there's a danger in giving young people guns and teaching them how to kill?
Yes.
Do you think it's wrong to force people to take up arms against their will?
Yes.
Would you oppose the reintroduction of national service?
Yes.
There you are, you see, Bernard. The perfect balanced sample. So, we just commissioned our own survey for the Ministry of Defense. See to it, Bernard.
I mean, that's what they do. In all honesty, that is exactly what issue advocacy polling does, and you should never trust issue advocacy polling. The fact of the matter is many Americans like many things, and they have no idea about the underlying workings of it. Many Americans would love to have a brilliant healthcare system. What if I told you that I could give you a healthcare system that covers all of your needs at no cost to you, that you would be able to actually keep your own doctor, that you would be able to cover all of your medical costs, that you would be able to cover all of your prescriptions, and it would be at no cost to you? Isn't that something you would like? Probably. On the other hand, what if I tell you you will actually have an increase in your taxes to cover it? What if I told you that you'll be able to have all of your medical coverage costs, but the government will get to approve what those procedures are? What if I told you that you'll be able to have all your prescriptions covered, but you will only have the prescriptions the government lets you have? Well, what if I told you can, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, but told you that your doctor will initially be assigned by the government, and if you like him, you can keep him? Suddenly, that doesn't sound so good, does it? It all depends on how you ask the questions. And the fact that issue advocacy polling is used by the media to try to tell you where things are, that's why so often you will see the media outraged. Outraged, I tell you, that members of Congress are doing something that goes completely contradictory to their issue polling. Well, of course they should, because Congress allegedly knows more about the details than the issue advocacy polling and the voters who are engaged with it. Never use issue advocacy polling. You know, I'm not a big fan of Dick Morris. I'm not. Dick Morris, the pollster, who he's become a Trump guy, but he was a Clinton guy. He helped Clinton in impeachment. Dick Morris actually has one very sound piece of advice that when I was a political consultant, I would always give candidates and then elected officials. The job of issue advocacy polling is never to tell elected officials what to do. Never take a poll to help you decide what to do. Instead, use polling to help you sell what you want to do. So it's not a poll of voters to tell you, the politician, hey, the voters want this healthcare thing, go do it. No, don't do that. You take your agenda that you want as a politician, and then you poll test it and see what works to try to sell the public on your agenda. What talking points should you use to sell people on this? And it works. For example, notice Republicans don't talk about employers anymore. Republicans don't talk about employers. They talk about job creators. And Republicans and Democrats, they don't talk about employees anymore. They talk about workers, or they talk about, more importantly, the middle class family. Everybody loves the middle class family, because even if you're wealthy these days, you think you're in the middle class. Nobody wants to admit to being rich. I do want to be rich, but I'm not there yet. But everybody says they're in the middle class. Even some poor people say they're in the middle class, because everybody loves the middle class. And so you talk about the middle class, you don't actually talk about you don't actually talk about employers or employees or rich or poor. You talk about the middle class. And it all has to do with people trying to sell their agenda based on what voters want to hear. They didn't go to the voters and say, what do you want to hear? They said, here's what I want to do, and how do I sell it to the voters? And they went out and they did their polling that way. That's what they need to do. Now, let's go full circle. The one polling where you can actually pay attention and where you should is candidate polling. Do you like this candidate or that candidate? Are you going to vote for this person or that person? I know conservatives in this day and age like to say the polling's wrong, but historically the polling's been pretty good. And there were some screw-ups in 2014 and in 2016, and the pollsters have largely worked out the kinks. I wouldn't dismiss the polling, but more importantly, look at the polling average. The polling average helps to mitigate all those problems in the polling, and it is very notable now that we have a series of polls that have come out from multiple pollsters that suddenly has the president ahead of all of his Democratic competitors. And at the same time, the president has rebounded in impeachment and is suddenly sees a majority of the public opposed to impeachment. After all of the Democrats' hearings, think about that. After all of the hearings, all of the money spent in ad campaigns against Republicans, the president is winning the impeachment argument.
Well connected and well respected. It's Erick Erickson, live every weekday.
I gotta give CNN credit for this. I want to play this soundbite from Chuck Schumer from yesterday. Welcome back. It's Erick Erickson here. The show is sponsored today by First Liberty of Georgia, firstlibertyga.com. If you need access to capital for your small or medium-sized business, you want to become a big business, go to firstlibertyga.com, talk to the Frosts. They cut out the bank bureaucracy to make decisions. Okay, I gotta play this audio from Chuck Schumer from yesterday. Kudos to CNN for calling this out. Here's Chuck Schumer from yesterday.
Of those 4 witnesses that you've called, some of the Republicans have suggested that it's not the Senate's job to get these witnesses. That was supposed to be done by the House Democrats. And the House Democrats decided not to go to court to get these witnesses. Should the Democrats in the House have pursued these witnesses?
Well, I'm not going to second guess the House. There is virtually no argument, no good argument, if you're interested in the facts, in not having these witnesses come forward now. And remember, the standard at a trial is different than the standard when a prosecutor, in this case the House Impeachment Authority, puts together a case. A trial is a place for witnesses.
That's what he says, but CNN points out he took the diametrically opposed position in 1998.
So I hear you on that, and just picking up on the request from Senator Schumer for those 4 fact witnesses, I think a lot of Americans want to hear what Mick Mulvaney would testify to, what John Bolton would have to say, but it is also a fact that back in 1999, during the Senate trial to impeach President Clinton, then newly a senator, Chuck Schumer, didn't want any new evidence or testimony admitted into that trial. And last night, Republican Senator John Cornyn, of course a member of the leadership team, told CNN, quote, "The House passed articles of impeachment. We are the jury, so we shouldn't be trying to retry it or redo something they have already had a shot at." He says no new evidence. Who's right, Senator Cornyn now and Chuck Schumer in 99, or Chuck Schumer today?
Good for CNN calling him out on that. Good for CNN on that. By the way, you should know that, while all of this is going on, the president is actually putting points on the board policy-wise. Here's NBC's coverage of all this.
And Kristen, meanwhile, while I have you here, against the backdrop of that impeachment, President Trump reportedly made some progress in the ongoing trade dispute with China over the weekend. What more do we know about that?
That's right, Craig, and it could be significant. Top officials here have announced that the U.S. and China have agreed to the first phase of a trade agreement with China after a trade war that has stretched on now for 18 months. China has agreed to buy billions of dollars in agricultural purchases from the U.S., according to officials here. And in return, President Trump has agreed not to impose punishing new tariffs that were scheduled to go into effect yesterday. Now, the goal is to have this all signed and sealed and delivered by January. If that happens, it could add even more fuel to the economy, and President Trump will undoubtedly tout the deal as a campaign promise kept.
He's also now added his 50th judge. Can you just to put this in perspective? In less than a full term, Donald Trump has put more federal judges on the bench with lifetime appointments than Barack Obama did in 8 years. 20% of all federal judges now are Trump appointees. And the kids at Vox, the left-wing media site, they point out that these aren't bad people. They're highly educated and highly credentialed and highly conservative judges, and that's a problem for them. They don't like that. But it's striking to me that the president continues to put points on the board and actually had a really, really good week last week, even as the Democrats were voting on impeachment. Now, when we come back, we need to shift gears because, believe it or not, we need to talk about anti-Semitism that is on the rise in this country. The left wants you to believe it's all white nationalism, but actually, no. This is an issue. It's bipartisan, but the left has a real deep problem with it right now, and Bernie Sanders is making matters worse. What he's done, when we come back, you need to know about, and you should be bothered by it, very much so. Erick Erickson here across the state of Georgia. Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here across the state of Georgia. I want to talk about, I have put this off for days on end, and I feel very strongly we need to talk about it. It's not something any of us want to talk about. I want to begin, though, with Bernie Sanders at a rally for Ilhan Omar, the Minnesota Democrat, who is alleged to have married her brother for immigration purposes and is divorced him and has been having a fling with somebody, wrecked somebody's home, home wrecker. People get, it's sad. She's a left-wing militant, deeply anti-Semitic, and Bernie Sanders on the campaign trail with her. Listen to this.
So the radical in me is radically excited to introduce the next president of the United States, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Power to the people, they're chanting. Let's get through the nonsensical cheers.
Thank all of you for coming out this evening, and I especially want to thank Congresswoman Ilhan Omar for coming all the way from Minneapolis. This Congresswoman is not only one of the most progressive members of the U.S. House, a leader on so many important issues. She is also one of the bravest members of the United States Congress.
Bravest members of the United States Congress to be an anti-Semite. Now, Bernie Sanders is Jewish. You can't get around that when you're making arguments about this. But consider he's surrounding himself with people and seems to have a very high tolerance for people who do blame the world's problems on Jews. Bernie blames the world's problems on capitalists. They all blame the world's problems on Jews. He also gets the support of and is supporting seeing younger from the Young Turks, who it has come out now has had a very favorable interview with David Duke, lamenting the influence of Jews in this country. All of this comes at a time there was a shooting in New Jersey that did not get widespread attention in the way it should have. A number of black militants went into a grocery store owned by Jews in New Jersey and attempted to kill all the Jewish people there, and appear now, we know, to have been targeting 50 Jewish children who were hiding upstairs. And thankfully, they did not get them. The video is terrifying. There was a video of these guys going into the store and killing the people in the store. It's horrific. The New Yorker today has a tweet out asking if the increase in Hasidic Jews in this neighborhood caused the shooting. Did the Jews cause their own deaths? There's a councilwoman in that city who took to social media to say that they might have gotten what they deserved. And I wish I were making that up. A black councilwoman in this New Jersey city suggesting that the Jews might have gotten what they deserve. Let me read for you. It's Joan Terrell is her name. Where was all this faith and hope when black homeowners were threatened, intimidated, and harassed by "I want to buy your house" brutes of the Jewish community? They brazenly came on the property of warred black homeowners and waved bags of money. Resistance was met with more threats of "We will bring drug dealers and prostitutes to live next door to you. You will sell to us then." Where was this faith and hope? Who helped black people living in rental properties owned by the Jewish people but were given 30-day eviction notices so that more Jews could move in? The $1 million Makes It Yours ads that mysteriously appeared in New York City encouraging Jewish people to come to Jersey City did not fight hate. Why was the Friends of the Lifers program destroyed? Why was the Second Chance program destroyed? Many of the community gardens tended to by black people were eliminated. One still exists and has been harassed almost daily. Solomon Duke did not spread faith and hope. He caused many reputations to be ruined. However, we learned 6 rabbis were accused of selling body parts. Where is the truth in these reports? If we're going to tell a narrative, it should begin with the truth, not more cover-up of the truth. Dialogue is important, but truth is critical. The Fulton Avenue Park, Bethune Center parking lot story was not about faith and hope. It was about taking from one community and giving to another community. There was no concern of faith and hope. There was just a small portion of the pains of the black community now being ignored in this rush to faith and hope. Drugs and guns are planted in the black community. Mr. Anderson and Ms. Graham went directly to the kosher supermarket. I believe they knew they would come out in body bags. What is the message they're sending? Are the brave enough to explore the answer to this message? Are we brave enough to stop the assault on the black communities of America? My people deserve respect and to live in peace in this community. Someone else replies, where is this type of attention from City Hall when Moorish people are getting gunned down left and right up on the Hill? Just conspiracy theories about Jewish residents. Did you know that every single day there is an anti-Semitic attack on Jews in New York City? And it's not done by white nationalists. See, the media is peddling this idea that it's a bunch of Trump-supporting white nationalists who are attacking Jews. And it is true that there have been white nationalist attacks, shooters in different synagogues around the country. You know, I was in Atlanta. I interviewed Nikki Haley last month up in Atlanta. And we did it at the Marcus Jewish Center. I didn't even know the place existed. It's gorgeous. It is up in Dunwoody. And it is a beautiful Jewish center next to a Jewish school. The security is amazing. The amount of security to get into this place is staggering. The guard gates, the high fences, it's crazy. To go to a Jewish center, and you know it's necessary? It is fundamentally necessary. The amount of hate peddled towards Jews in this country is staggering. And the Antifa groups and the white nationalists are kissing cousins when it comes to this. The white nationalist alt-right guys and the left-wing Antifa people are joined at the hip in anti-Semitism. They blame Jews for everything. They've concocted crazy conspiracy theories, like this councilwoman who's convinced the Jews are planting guns on black residents of the city and bringing prostitutes and drugs into communities to degrade the neighborhood so the Jews can buy up all the property. That's what she's claiming. A member of the Board of Education in Jersey City, New Jersey. We got that in Georgia, too. And then, of course, you have the people who blame Jews for the death of Jesus. It's all the Jews' fault. Never mind that the sin is with us all. It just happened to be in Jerusalem. Jesus was a Jew. But people like to make shortcuts for anti-Semitism there. This is happening a lot. I cannot believe that in Atlanta, Georgia, we got to have super top-end security at a Jewish community center because of the violence that could be directed at that place. And the problem here is that everything in the media is now done in a partisan way. So if there's not an angle to make the Republicans look bad, the media doesn't cover it. And that's just a fact. It is a fact that in the media, narrative is actually the bigger bias. The narrative bias is a bigger bias than partisan bias in the media. And the narrative bias in the media is that Donald Trump has stoked racial hatred in this country and anti-Semitism in this country and sparked white nationalists to rise up. And the issue is that because the shooting in Jersey City was conducted by black militants and the anti-Semitic violence that's happening in New York more often than not is happening by either white progressives or black people, it doesn't get covered by the press. It literally happens every day in New York City. Just 2 months ago, at a Jewish school in Brooklyn, someone drove up onto the sidewalk to try to run over Jewish children going to a school. Did you know that? Did you see it in the media? It happened. It was documented in the local paper, what didn't make national news, because it happens every day. It's like the violence in Chicago. The violence in Chicago happens every day. People are gunned down in Chicago. So does the national media cover it? No. There's anti-Jewish violence in New York City every day. So does the media cover it? No. And it's outside the narrative. If it was white people shooting black people in Chicago every day, it would be headline news. But it's black on black violence, so they don't cover it. And that's the reality. That is the hard truth. It doesn't conform to the narrative the media wants to tell about the rise of racism in this country. Same with the violence in New York and now New Jersey and elsewhere. There is a cancer in our society. And it does not help that a guy like Bernie Sanders, who can say, well, I'm Jewish, I can't be anti-Semitic. Okay. But why do you have such a tolerance for those who are? Why do you support a candidate for office who literally blames the Jews for problems? Why do you support Ilhan Omar, who blames Jews for her problems? Why do you support the guy in California who conducts fawning interviews with David Duke, a racist anti-Semite? And the media says nothing about this because it doesn't conform to the narrative. So if I can shift the conversation just a little bit, when the stories in the press don't conform to the narrative the press wants to tell you, the storytelling, they don't tell you the story. Or they leave out that data point because it interferes with their narrative. And that's the real bias of the press. Is there a partisan bias in the press? Yes, there absolutely is. The majority of people in the national media are white, secular, from well-to-do families who live with coastal elites, who do not go to church, do not have anything in common with blue-collar voters, and never get near a river valley unless that river valley is within 50 miles of the ocean. They don't live in the world that you and I live in here in Georgia. They would look on the map and they would say, oh, you've got a Vienna in Georgia instead of a Vienna. Oh, you've got a Cairo in Georgia instead of a Cairo. What's happening in Houston County, Georgia? They don't know our vernacular. They would call it pop instead of Coke. They don't have anything in common with us. And they develop narratives in their bubbles in New York and Washington. And the narratives are Republicans are bad. Government is good. If you want to reduce the size and scope of government, you're the bad guy because government is good. Government solves problems. So conservatives are always bad. Conservatives who don't want Washington to do stuff, they're always the bad guys of the media because the narrative is that government is a good. Government is an equalizer. And so when confronted with stories of anti-Semitism, the media doesn't know what to do. It's all turned upside down in the press. They can't figure out how to respond. But I'm telling you it's happening, and you should be upset by it. And you should be mindful of it. Y'all, most of my friends who are Jewish are Democrats. And we don't need to get into they're voting against their interest stuff that certain Republicans peddle these days. They're Americans, they're Jewish, they're Democrats. If you can't be friends with someone because of their political views, you're worshiping a false god. You're worshiping an idol. John Calvin says our minds are perpetual factories of idols. If you don't have friends who are Jewish, first of all, they have way better food at Christmas time than Christians do. I don't like ham. You go to a Jewish household, you're going to get latkes, you're going to get brisket, you're going to have good eats. You go to some Christian, they're going to have like honey baked ham, which honey baked ham is fine. It's fine. The roast turkey at honey baked ham is better, but nonetheless, you're missing out by not having Jewish friends. And we're missing out as a society by not focusing on the rising violence against Jewish people in this country. And when you hear these stories, I want you to remember that one of the reasons these stories are so, even though the violence is very common, why the stories are so uncommon is because our media in this country is in storyteller mode these days. They don't want to tell you who, what, where, when, why, and how. They want to tell you a story. And the story in the age of Trump is that orange man bad, anti-Semites Republican. And it turns out that's not true in many of these cases. And so the media can't tell you the story because it doesn't fit with the narrative they've already shaped. And that's really genuinely unfortunate.
Politics, news, religion. Erick Erickson talks about all the things you're not supposed to.
We need to pause, and we need to have a brief discussion. 75 years ago today, low on food, low on ammunition, low on medical supplies, outnumbered 5 Nazis for each American soldier, in the dead of winter, the Germans were convinced the Americans would surrender. And they didn't. The Battle of the Bulge. The Battle of the Bulge happened 75 years ago. And military veterans and officials from Belgium and the U.S. are gathered together today on the streets of Belgium to remember the Battle of the Bulge. There were 500 Nazis, and there were 18 American soldiers. They delayed for 20 hours an entire division of Nazis. They were in the Ardennes. They were encircled and defiant at Bastogne. They held firm at the Eisenborn Ridge, and they defeated them. Until backup could come, they held them. They stopped the Nazi advance. 18 Americans held back 500 Nazis. The Battle of the Bulge was a significant point in World War II. We are losing so many of our veterans from World War II at an astonishing rate. The United States has not a single man left who fought in World War I. In fact, I think there are only a handful of men left who fought in World War I on the planet. And the number of men who fought in World War II declines every day. I, back in August, interviewed Grover Sassman, who he's the oldest operating Harley dealer in Georgia. And I interviewed him. He was a mechanic. He's in the Marines. He fought alongside MacArthur in the Pacific Theater, went into the Philippines before MacArthur did. Had some fascinating stories. At one point, he was able to put together the front of a plane and the back of a plane to make a new plane because the back of the one plane and the front of the other were damaged. He knew they were going to throw them overboard. He knew that they needed them, and with just ingenuity, he was able to take two planes and make a brand new plane. Well, relatively speaking. The stories of these people is incredible. The courage, the faith, the luck, the willingness to go into harm's way, it really is incredible. We, as a country, forget our history. I went to Mercer University. Yeah, I live in Macon now. Went to Mercer here, met my wife there, majored in history and political science, got a minor in English. That was the law school track. But I love history. I genuinely love history. And it is appalling to me in this day and age to see how history really isn't taught well in schools anymore. It's not appreciated. And there's this desire that we should be more current in our history, or we should focus our history on various minorities, and we should represent genders, and we should study the history of gay people in America, or the history of Asian migrants in the country, or the rise of feminism in the country, as opposed to real history. I don't mean to offend you by that, but this country has a story to tell. And in large part, that history was written by and acted out by a lot of white folks for a long time. And that's the way it was. And you can say that was wrong, okay, but that's the way it was. And the exploits of George Washington matter. The exploits of Lincoln and the exploits of Grant and Lee, they matter. They shaped the country. It's one of the most appalling things with this New York Times 1619 project is to suggest that America was founded on slavery. And it's not true. They have distorted history. And it's been amazing to see even liberal historians come forward and say, no, that they're getting all this wrong. They're rewriting history.
30.
A history that can't be rewritten and that needs to be remembered is the stuff like the Battle of the Bulge 75 years ago today. Our men holding back the Nazis. And compare that
15.
now with the rise of anti-Semitism in this country. We can do better as a country, and we should.
10.
It's Erick Erickson here across the state of Georgia. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. More happy notes tomorrow.